the first speaker we want to introduce is a speaker or a person that we have been very inspired by. We met Cristian in London. He has created a network of more than 1,000 young innovators internationally. And I got extremely inspired by all the people I met through his network. He's both a global shaper. We've been cooperating with both global shapers and Northzone in creating this event.
Thank you.
And he's gonna give us an introduction and set the bar and standard for you to follow. So give a big hand for Christian Busch from Sandbox.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's a great pleasure being with you, and particularly being with such a positive energy here in the room, so I'm very grateful to be here. I really want to take you on a journey from our own personal enlightenment to what I believe will be a kind of societal and organizational enlightenment. And I want you to switch back 15 years when I was a teenager in Heidelberg, which is a sleepy, small city in Germany, where Goethe and Schiller were sitting on the river, well, a few more 100 years back, but they were sitting there writing their poems. And I was running around there, and I was one of these self-centered individuals, really focused on myself, going out partying, thinking about the small pleasures of life, and not really considering the people around me. And I was really, I didn't prove any value, I think, to anyone, and particularly I still adore my parents for enduring me during that period. And then with 18, I got my first car, and I basically transferred my reckless lifestyle into my driving style. So I was probably holding the unofficial world record of how many dustbins you can kill on the way to school when you drive and all these kind of things. And then one day I was not so lucky anymore. And with 80 kilometers per hour, I crashed into 4 parking cars. Fortunately, no one in the cars, but all cars completely crashed. And I will never forget the policeman who came to my window, who opened the window, and who said, "Wow, he's still alive." And that was a sentence that stuck with me for some time after, and I dreamt of that. Wow, he's still alive. So the assumption that you should actually have been dead. And a sentence that resonated with me was Steve Jobs, who died of cancer, who said that in the end, death is life's greatest motivator. Because death lets us think about there is only a limited time we have here that we should use to the best. And one thing you think about, certainly not when you are coming out of this car, is how much money you have on your bank account, how many cars you have in your garage, all these kind of material things, you know? Who cares? The things I thought about the days after was, who were the people in my life who would actually have cared if I would have died? You know? Whom did I actually have any impact on? And I had to make my own balance sheet, and I had to say, well, no one. There was no one where I felt I could actually have done something that made them feel better about themselves. And so since this day, I was on kind of a journey for myself in terms of figuring out how can I live a life here that really matters, that matters to me, and that matters to the people around me. And what I figured is after and after, I met more and more people who had a similar mindset, who said, well, if I do something in organizations, wherever I do it, I want to put a certain meaning to it. I'm not satisfied anymore to just go ahead and run and then in 50 years look back, you know, this Mark Twain thing, look back and you will regret what you haven't done, not the things you have done. And I think I was quite struck by that. So one of the things we came up with was to think, well, there seems to be a generation emerging. Not this age group, you know, the 20 to 30-year-olds, the Y generation, but a generation Y question mark. So a generation that questions things. It can be across age groups, right? The 50-year-olds, the 25-year-olds, but it's people who want to put meaning to things and who want to understand how what they do actually matters to others. Here's 4 of these. We call them impact innovators. Sebastian Lindström, he's actually a Swede. He traveled 18 African countries. He documented very interesting, cool young people on the ground who were usually unsung heroes, so these people usually not portrayed. And then he showcased that in the West, and he showed basically what these people do there to really raise awareness of what they're doing on the ground. Robin Scott is a great entrepreneur in London who connects those people with great ideas with those people who have the resources to make these ideas happen. So a kind of effective matchmaking. Eva, who of you came across the Holsti Manifesto? Okay, we have 2. Okay, the rest I can really recommend you to Google it, Holsti Manifesto. What they did is basically, they said a few years ago, we have a problem here. Eco-fashion is basically in the corner of hippies, alternatives, left wings. So how can we make eco-fashion fashionable? So they were at some point sitting in Central Park and they were writing down their thoughts, what they want to stand for, what they think life is about, and they came up with a manifesto. And that manifesto was about what they thought life should be about and what they felt their organization then also would represent. This manifesto was downloaded 80 million times by now, and this manifesto basically represents how their organization works. I'm going to talk about that a bit more later. And here's Julie Maxwell, who's a designer who helps people become designers early on and really make something out of this. But the point is that all these people are in completely different fields. They do completely different stuff. But what unites them is that they want to combine making a lot of money with doing a lot of things that really matter, right? And the problem they face is that nowadays, we still have this kind of bad division. On the one hand side, we have the profit-oriented organizations focusing on making a profit, very good professional development, personal development, you know, think about McKinsey's and Bain's and others. But the meaning comes a bit too short, right? I mean, 2 months as a volunteer somewhere in Africa doesn't really help to put real meaning to the job itself, right? But then on the other hand side, you have the social enterprises, charities, NGOs, which are basically a knee-jerk response, right? It's kind of like trying to balance these other organizations. What they do is they give a lot of meaning, they give a lot of self-fulfillment, but usually there's not so much professional development, there's not so much training, there's not so much career advancement, and particularly also not so much money. And so the question becomes, what is wrong at the moment? And so what I believe is wrong is that organizations nowadays, both social enterprises and enterprises, are still implicitly based on this old Maslow hierarchy of needs. Who of you came across the Maslow hierarchy of needs? Okay, nice, so it's most of you. So basically this old hierarchy says you first have to fulfill material needs, then safety needs, then emotional needs, and if you still have time, then you can self-fulfill yourself, right? That is kind of the linear journey. People like Bill Gates, they first set up Microsoft, then a foundation. First do well, then do good. It's a very linear approach of how you go about it, right? There are countless bankers who would say, I first go into banking and then with 50, when I have the resources, I go into microfinance, right? Never really happened so far. So basically, the problem here is also it is based on a self-interested idea, right? That you as an individual go through these stages, but you don't really reflect on what does that mean for others. What we believe, though, is that this is shifting. For this generation Y, we have an enlightened circle of needs. We have a generation emerging that wants to fulfill these needs at the same time, rather than linearly, and to understand that it depends on the circle of others. The more we collaborate, the more we work with others, the more we depend on others as collaborators, the more we have to take into account what does my action mean for this person. So it is in our enlightened self-interest to be not too self-interested. Otherwise, we mess up potential corporations and so on. And I think what we see then is, when you look into social media, and these things, this guy is Googling himself, seeing how many times he was mentioned somewhere and so on. And the point is that social media not only allows us to bring our actions to a global level, but it is also an amazing accountability frame, right? You're now accountable to so many people globally with whom you will probably collaborate one day, with whom you might work, and you are very easily traceable. And so basically, there is a certain peer-to-peer accountability emerging. It's not only anymore your supervisor at UBS or at your startup who directs you or who supervises you, but you literally have millions of people around you who somehow have an eye on you. And what I believe comes with this is that when we see these networked organizations emerging, when we see there are new challenges emerging, I think we need a completely new type of organization to tackle that. So we framed it around impact organization. We said, well, these type of organizations need to balance social and financial at the same strategic level. And we worked with a lot of organizations around how do you actually put pillars into place that make that possible? Because obviously it's a step-by-step thing. If you take particularly multinationals, you can't change it from yesterday to today, but you can work after and after through the pillars. Similar for startups, you will probably go after and after. So you start with an impact mission. You say, well, what is the real purpose? Why are we here? Why is what we're doing, why does it matter to others? And then we go to the enlightened leadership. You need people who actually understand that in 20 years you will be irrelevant if you do something that harms people. If you work in developing countries particularly, if you're not working with local communities, providing real value to the local community, you are already now irrelevant. Look at Cisco and others. They are working there on this idea. Genuine values. I guess we're all sick of this idea of having companies state all their values on the homepage, but not even their own employees know what they talk about. But really getting to the point where you have these things embedded in processes and embedded in systems. Lateral accountability is this peer-to-peer control that I believe these network structures we have, co-tweets, other things, enable people to see each other and to be more responsible. And also then KPIs and incentives. And I believe that these type of organizations then fulfill these at the same time. I want to close because I get a kind of frenetic winking. I want you to imagine that this arrow is your life. Imagine this is the life you will live. Some of you are born in 1980, some of you before, some of you after. And with the help of modern medicine, you might live until 2080. Let it be more, let it be less. Let it be a car accident, it might be tomorrow. But the point being, this is your life. Before you, there were errors. At the same time with you, there are errors. And after you, there will be errors. But I think what you want to think about is, how does my error after I die stay on? And this is actually the key message I want to leave you with. What would happen if I would have a car accident tomorrow? Would I have mattered in this world or not? And I want to close with my favorite quote of Margaret Mead, who said that you should never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world, because indeed it is the only thing that ever has. And with this, I wish you a fantastic evening and hopefully catch up soon. Thank you.